huge shout out to my viewers who made this video happen. Every single one of these titles came straight from the comments. Lesser-known war films, forgotten Oscar nominees, international releases, and a few you can barely even stream today. Honestly, some of these picks are better than the ones studios were pushing back then. So let's get into it. This is an HBO movie from the late 90s about the Battle of Hürtgen Forest, one of the grimmest and least known battles of World War II. Ron Eldard plays a reluctant private who's forced into command when pretty much his entire unit gets wiped out. So now he's in charge of a bunch of young, inexperienced soldiers who have to fight in this absolutely miserable, muddy forest for almost no strategic gain. Military historians actually call the real-life battle a meat grinder, and the movie totally nails that bleakness. You can feel how pointless it all was. Here's what one of my viewers said about it. When Trumpets fade was more realistic than Saving Private Ryan, except for the first 10 minutes of that movie. It is intense from the first minute to the last, and the acting is superb. There are no Superman heroes there, and it's truly a gut-wrenching movie about young men dying for the insanity of war. That pretty much sums it up. Here's a World War II movie most people completely forgot existed, even though back in 1951 it actually got nominated for Best Picture. It's set toward the very end of war. The Allies are closing in, Germany's desperate, but they're still fighting. So the Americans start sending German prisoners back into Germany as spies because regular spies kept getting caught by the Gestapo. The main character's a young, idealistic German medic who agrees to spy against his own country. It's based on a real operation, actually happened. And the filmmakers even shot this movie on location in Germany right after the war. Bombed-out buildings, real tanks and weapons still lying around. It looks incredibly realistic because, well, it was. Must have been surreal for people watching back then, like the war was still happening. One viewer brought this up perfectly, saying it was very good and filmed in post-war Germany in 1951, so lots of war damage still visible. It's kind of forgotten about. This is a German movie from 2017, based on a real incident near the end of World War II. A young German deserter finds an officer's uniform lying around, puts it on, and immediately people think he's a captain. But it doesn't stop there. He starts to believe he actually has power, recruits other deserters and criminals, and goes on a murderous rampage. Crazy thing is, no one even questions him. He was actually only 21 when he was later charged for war crimes. This movie's got a lot going for it. It shows how chaotic Germany was toward the end. Tons of soldiers were deserting, something you rarely hear about. And it really digs into how fast human morals collapse when people get power out of nowhere. Here's how one viewer described it, short and simple. The Captain is the most visceral movie I've ever seen. This one's a 3-hour Finnish war movie about a machine gun company deployed by Finland in 1941 during their fight against the Soviet Union. They cross the border, engage in brutal guerrilla warfare, and the film does not glamorize it at all, just shows the grim reality of war, loss, and tragedy on both sides. It feels very different from most war movies. You get lots of realistic, painful moments. Soldiers dying up close, the camera doesn't look away. Like soldiers literally stepping over bodies of friends who just got killed. One viewer pretty much summed up its impact, saying clearly, "The Unknown Soldier is my favorite World War II film of all time. It is absolutely a top 5 of the genre." Here's one from 1945, a different kind of World War II movie. It's about a platoon of American soldiers who land on the beaches near Salerno, Italy, and have to move inland to capture a key farmhouse 6 miles away. But what's really unique here is there's actually very little on-screen action. Almost all the battles happen off-camera, which gives you the sense of really being there. Like the characters say, most of their combat experiences are just hearing the fighting and trying to survive. It's deliberately paced. It slows down, speeds up again, capturing the tension of just waiting and moving forward in war. And one of my commenters nailed why this one's special. It's a good look at a forgotten theater of the war. Directed by John Frankenheimer, this one's about the French resistance desperately trying to stop Nazis from stealing priceless artwork near the end of World War II. Burt Lancaster was originally not happy with the director Arthur Penn, who had a psychological, slow approach, so Lancaster fired him after just a few days and brought in Frankenheimer, who turned it into an action-packed war thriller. And when I say action-packed, I mean it. No miniatures, no CGI. All the train crashes you see here, real trains, real explosives, actual wreckage, people getting hurt left and right. Frankenheimer himself later admitted it was pure luck nobody got killed. They actually shot the movie in France, in locations still dangerous from leftover World War II ammunition. One of my viewers summed it up perfectly: sterling performances and great practical effects. Exactly right, still impressive today. Also called The Fighter Pilot, this movie tells the story of a brother and sister in modern-day Japan learning about their grandfather, who was actually a kamikaze pilot in World War II. They reach out to his old comrades, but everyone gives totally different accounts about who he was and how he ended up flying those missions. When it came out, director Hayao Miyazaki actually criticized the movie, calling it a pack of lies. Probably because Miyazaki had just made his own movie, The Wind Rises, about the same plane, the Zero Fighter. But the real reason Eternal Zero didn't get attention here is probably because it tries to show the kamikaze pilot sympathetically, which obviously stirred up a huge controversy. And that's a shame because at its core, it's genuinely anti-war and emotionally powerful. One of my viewers said it perfectly. Although it is a fictional story, it is very authentic. When it comes right down to it, foreign-made historical period films are far more authentic than those made in Hollywood. Way before Christopher Nolan made Dunkirk, there was already this 50s film starring John Mills. Stories simple and direct, a group of British soldiers stranded behind enemy lines in France, trying desperately to reach Dunkirk for rescue. Meanwhile, back in Britain, you've got civilians, like newspaper reporter Charles Foreman, played by Bernard Lee, doing whatever they can to help, even taking their own boats across the channel to rescue the troops. Producer Michael Balkan said it was the biggest movie he'd ever done in terms of scale, and it definitely paid off. Became the second highest grossing film in Britain in 1958. One of my viewers put it really simple: this is one of the best war movies. And they're exactly right. It's surprisingly moving, especially at the end when the two separate storylines finally come together. Almost like something Tarantino would do decades later. This is a lesser-known Australian World War II film about three men fighting against Rommel's forces in North Africa. It's obviously dated, definitely an old-school flag-waving war flick. Starts slow, with plenty of stiff conversations and an unnecessary romance subplot. But once the story moves to North Africa, things pick up fast with documentary-style battles and some pretty intense action. Stars Grant Taylor as the classic square-jawed hero, Chips Rafferty bringing some personality, and Peter Finch as an upper-class Englishman. It's especially impressive that this was made during the war itself. Many of the actors were actually serving soldiers on leave from duty. It's not Gallipoli, but it gets the job done. It's a flag waver about some heroic men who held on under the most adverse circumstances. Not perfect, but still a fascinating watch, especially given when it was made. Now this one's pretty different. You've got Nick Nolte playing an American soldier named Leroyd who escapes Japanese captivity during World War II and ends up in Borneo, deep in the jungle. He meets a primitive tribe who mistake him for a god. Eventually, British troops find Leroyd and his tribe, and even though he really doesn't want to fight anymore, circumstances force him to defend his new people. Directed by John Milius, guy who wrote Apocalypse Now, and he originally considered this his best film. Problem was, the studio totally butchered it. Orion Pictures cut it to pieces against Milius's wishes. He genuinely believed he made a great film, but the version released to theaters wasn't what he intended. One of my viewers said this about it: "A great movie in my opinion, it touches war in a very different environment than we're used to watching on screen." Exactly. Definitely unique and exciting old-fashioned adventure, even if it wasn't exactly what Milius intended. This one's pretty obscure, hard to track down, but definitely worth it if you do. Set in 1942, when the Germans are pushing fast towards Stalingrad. They think they're about to win easily, but suddenly they hit fierce resistance from the Red Army, including these divisions just brought in from faraway Siberia. The 321st Siberian Regiment ends up surrounded by elite German troops, massively outnumbered, fighting desperately. It's almost like a high-end reenactment film. There's barely any traditional plot here, just intense battle scenes and really strong dramatic moments. Some people even call it the best Russian war film ever. Personally, I wouldn't go that far. But the battles themselves really are incredible, and like someone said in the comments, it's so good I've only seen it in Russian with no subtitles. Best action sequences ever. Also known as Night Ambush, this one's pretty different from your usual war movie. It's by Powell and Pressburger, the guys who made classics like Black Narcissus. The plot's based on real-life events. British officers secretly plot to kidnap the Nazi commander occupying Crete and sneak him out without anyone noticing, which completely humiliates the Germans. It's actually Powell's last film as a director, and honestly, it's not up there with his best. The pacing is slow, not super suspenseful, but it's still enjoyable, especially the camaraderie among the soldiers and locals, plus some good dry humor. It's definitely a movie of its time, 50s-style acting and effects, but it's historically pretty accurate, very realistic. Like one of my commenters perfectly described it, it's got little violence and no shootouts, but a tremendous sense of realism, great acting, and the courage of the Cretan people shines through. This movie is about the Battle of Arnhem in World War II, the same one covered later by Bridge Too Far. But this one came first, filmed right after the war ended, with actual soldiers who fought in that battle reenacting their own experiences. They even shot it at the real locations in Arnhem, used real equipment, even an actual Panther tank appears in the film. The acting's honestly not great. These guys were real soldiers, not professional actors, so anytime someone starts talking, it's pretty stiff. But once the action scenes start, these guys clearly know exactly what they're doing because they've literally lived through it. Like someone commented, it's filmed less than a year after Operation Market Garden and used extras that had participated in the battle. That alone makes it a fascinating watch, and a really interesting contrast to Bridge Too Far, which came decades later. This one's about a conflict not many people talk about, the Winter War between Finland and the Soviet Union in 1939. Stalin attacks Finland, and two Finnish brothers get sent out to Karelia, fighting to survive against massive Soviet forces. They used real Soviet T-26 tanks captured by the Finns. Some of these actual tanks still run, sitting in Finnish museums today. This film captures exactly how desperate and brutal war really is. No ammo, constant bombardments, totally outnumbered, surviving purely on your wits and whatever rifle you have left. One commenter summed it up perfectly. I still think it's one of the greatest and most authentic movies of the period ever made. Couldn't agree more. Great acting, amazing photography, very graphic violence at times, and honestly probably one of the best Finnish films ever made. Shows clearly how pointless war really is and who ends up paying the price. This one covers the real assassination attempt on Reinhard Heydrich, Nazi officer known as the Butcher of Prague, by a team of Czech commandos trained by the British. It's probably one of the most detailed, accurate films about the whole operation, including the tragic aftermath when the Nazis took absolutely horrific revenge. As an action movie, though, it's a bit uneven. The parachuting scenes, all the preparation, moves pretty slow. But then comes the big finale, a massive gunfight at a church where the 7 resistance fighters were hiding. It's detailed, intense, though maybe a bit exaggerated in how effectively they fought back. Still, it's gripping stuff. The realism, the details, the intensity definitely makes up for the slower parts earlier on.